Kind of starting exactly at 7 here, which is kind of great. Um, Wanted to do a quick technical check-in, make sure that everyone can hear me okay. There'll be a bit of a pause. I think there's like a 15-second delay, which is kind of annoying, which I apologize for. We're working out some technical stuff. But yeah, if someone could drop a comment in the Discord or the live chat here at the YouTube studio, um, let me know if you can hear me okay, or if you need me to crank the volume a little bit. Um, Funny, interesting thing is that you're going to be seeing today. You're going to be seeing a little more of my apartment than usual, because some folks were asking last week about some longsword kata. So while I don't have, I would say, KDF specific kata just yet, that is something that's going to take a lot of homework, and I haven't had a whole lot of time this week outside of personal things. I do have some really good. Oh yeah, good. I'm glad. I just got to know all sounds good to me. Perfect. Thank you, Alex. So one of the things that I will be kind of demonstrating, by kind of I mean I will be demonstrating today, are the first two what I refer to as 120 level longsword kata. I'm kind of people who are taking the Sword Class NYC online classes will notice I've started to separate the different classes, kind of attempting to steal a little bit from the academic world, 100, 200, 300, 400 level, etc., etc., etc. I'm currently putting together a 120 level class, which I actually think everyone should take, including beginners and advanced students, because it's going to really focus a lot on really fundamental fencing things that we should always be studying. So we'll be doing today. What I'm hoping to do is some longsword kata beginner for the first set of longsword kata, as well as talking a little bit about swords and scabbards, because I know Liliana had some questions about that, and then opening it up to kind of a general Q&A as we normally do. So without further ado, let's do the first longsword kata, the first set, I'm going to call it. So what you're going to notice is a few different things. The first thing is that I'm not going to be doing it with a sword. First of all, my ceilings are just a little too low, so I'll be using a piece of rattan. The rattan, if I do tap my ceiling, it's going to be less shitty for me. I like to keep my security deposit. But also, it is something that I want to encourage beginner and more advanced students to look into purchasing. It's something that we could definitely, if people are so inclined, put in, for New York folk, we can put together a group order. But I think using the sticks is a very good tool to practice some fundamental things. People who take my master class know that we have rattan sticks that we use very frequently. I just feel as though that they're just a very good tool in our learning of fencing. So one of the things, like I said, last week, I think even the week before, there was some mentioning of people who really like some longsword kata. Now, I'm going to be doing this with a Grand Baton stick. It's like a 55-inch piece of rattan. It's from woodenswords.com, Purple Heart Armory. The other thing that I like about them, real quick side note, they're $16. So this is something that even really beginner students who are just getting started can purchase before they're even able to purchase a sword-shaped object, and it's something that we can incorporate into our class and make it more accessible to everyone. I might also switch over to my messer because it is short enough to use inside a little bit. So what I'm going to do, so this is the first set of longsword kata, and it's going to involve knowledge of Oberhau and the hanging parry. And the way that I like to teach the hanging parry, again, anyone who's taken my messer class, I know, you'll survive through the repetitiveness. I like teaching the hanging parry both in a high position, can be on both sides, yeah, and also a low position. So what this particular kata, the story that this one is telling, is that someone has struck you from above, and you are parrying here in the upper right hand ox region, and you were parrying with an outside hanging, and then you were returning an overhow, a right overhow, and then you are parrying with a low hanging fluke to the low hanging fluke. Yeah, here, kind of as if someone is taking a shot at your leg, and then you return the sword to Valentag, you strike down. So let me go ahead and run this for you. So I'm having everyone start right now in this position. The first position, or the attentive position. All right. So to begin, we start here. We then take the sword or the stick. So I'm just going to be referring to it as sword for now. We take the sword and we put it to our side as if it is in the scabbard, still with this hand down. Take the sword and move it forward to long point. And as this is coming in, take a step backwards with our left foot and grip the sword at the same time. So by the time you reach long point, your hand is on the sword and ready to go. From here, hopefully I have space. I have to shortcut a little bit, or at least I will for this. All right. I want you to enter Valentag, strike right overhow. Right. No step for that right overhow. It's just that step. Right. And then you're going to bring your feet together, parry on the right hand, again, upper ox right hand quadrant as such. Step backwards, strike right overhow. Step forward, feet together again, blocking in this low kind of hanging fluke. Right. Again, now stepping backwards, back to high Valentag. Now for this final piece, I want you to cut overhow, all the way down, back to long point, sword back to scabbards, and then step back to your initial beginning position. All right, that's our first one. I'll do that one more time. So begin here. Let's start again, shall we? Okay. So that's our first one, and basically what we're practicing here, we're practicing right overhow, a hanging parry riposte, hanging parry ward, or hanging and with a Nachschlag. So both practicing parrying high, parrying low, and the counter strikes back. All right. I will put up. I'll record myself doing these probably in a space with more ceiling clearance and wall clearance and such. And also, I'll be going over these again and more of them on Friday when I do my longsword class through the Sword Class NYC Zoom. So tune in if you don't know about that. Sword Class is offering a bunch of free Zoom seminars right now. So I'll be probably going in on Fridays. Haven't completely set all the schedule yet, simply because just working everything out. Because what is the future? So I'll be going over these all again, and hopefully I'll have some videos to post and some written material to kind of cover all the bases. So that's the first one. The second one we're going to do is a similar thing, but on the other side. So begin the same way. Scabbards, present. And what we're going to do is when we come up the Vontag, we're going to change our feet. So now our left foot is forward. We're going to strike left overhow. Bring our feet together. We're going to parry, hanging parry this way. Yep. Back, strike. Sorry, instead of high, we go low. Again, we go low. Strike. We kind of, sorry, I'm getting some questions here. Just give me 1 second. I can hear you. Low-hanging fluke is the low-hanging. Thanks, Josh. All right, let me start again from scratch because I all got muddled. All right. So the major difference between the first kata and the second one is that A, you are going to be doing left overhow, and this one that is on the left, you are going to, when you do the warding, you're going to begin by using low, the low-hanging fluke. Yeah. Strike that left overhow. High. Strike. Back. Right. And so there, again, there's a bit of probably non-martial formality to the movement. So especially this first part of being here and then bringing it here, doing this. It's all part of the art, right? And part of that art is kind of comes from, is there to help us kind of study more mindfully, like we've been talking about in the past couple of weeks. Having those elements that are the more for show are also honing skills of attention and honing skills of body motion. So again, let's go over the second one. Yeah. So start in the first position, to scabbards, to long point, to Vontag, bringing the feet together, bringing your right foot back, and then doing left overhow, feet back together, to then parry, low hanging parry here. Foot comes back again as you come up to strike. Foot comes up. Strike. Point. So those are the first two. Like I said, I'll post some videos and things of these in a bit, or another day later this week. Part of the reason why I do these, or I like these very basic kata, again, they're about very, very, very basic fencing pieces, and also they, you can do them, at least this iteration of them, you can do them with very little space needed in terms of the footwork. It's not, I'm not doing large drills that make me drift all the way over here. I can literally do them, let me just grab something shorter. These are things you can do with, say, even a weighted trainer. And you only need maybe, at max, 3 steps, right? So these are things that you can do, and we've been kind of designing them with limited space involved, but they're also something that we can, if we needed to, we could extrapolate the space. So we could even have something, so you're starting in the long, you come up to the long point from here, step, cut, step and ward, step and cut. So it's something that we can practice both in space, in place, and in a larger area of space. I think I'm gonna create, not quite sure, looking at 5, maybe 8 of these beginner ones for now, and we'll kind of build upon them, and we'll have a nice little beginner kata set, and then we'll have some KDF ones in the not too distant future. So those are two things you can. Those are some two kata, and though they look very simple, they are things that you can. Things you always need to be practicing, and things that would most certainly will always require attention. So though very simple, you can work up to perfection, right? So next, the next question was, I know Liliana had the question about swords and scabbards and things. I sadly don't have my messer in scabbard or my sword in scabbard, but I just wanted to talk briefly about how it kind of fits into a larger argument that I have all the time. Complaint I have about like the fetter industry. It is the swords. A lot of fetter shots are too long. Yes, they are supposed to be long swords, two-handed long swords, but they also might just, in general, for the most part, be too long to have scabbards and be drawing from scabbards. Again, it kind of fits into my belief that most of KDF, most of longsword work was done by people in a judicial dueling situation, and these drawing techniques are more for smaller, like side swords, or messers, things for a more practical way. And most people, when they were wearing, like, say, a long sword, it was because it was fashionable. It is not easy to draw a very long sword from your side. When I do JSA work, I have if you look at my katana versus my shinken versus Uriaito versus my longsword, or my fetter, my mire is like 36 inches long, which is, or the blade, I should say, is 36 inches long. I should be using something more akin probably to 30, somewhere between 29 and 31 inch longsword. When I cut now, I've been using the Arms and Armor Town, I believe it is. It has like a 30-inch blade on it, and I will say my cutting has completely changed. I don't feel as though it's like randomly, I just had a random good cutting day, I had a random bad cutting day. My successes and my failures are more consistent. While that might be partially because of training, I think it does have a little bit to do with the fact that the tool itself is something that I am more consistently able to use to operate in the same over all of its use in a consistent, to be able to use this tool in a consistent manner. So I know that hopefully in the future when I'm working again, knock on wood, I plan on having a custom Fetterspiel made that's about the same, about 29 to 30 inches. Though again, it's one of those things where I'm a shorter person, especially when it comes to like the men fencers. Actually, no, I take that back. In terms of most fencers, I am on the shorter and lighter side. So a lot of folks have been like, "Oh, get a longer sword to get that reach." I just don't feel like I can do the things. And that all feeds back to the question of swords and scabbards. Having a 36 to 40-inch longsword in a scabbard at your side, you can have the best saibiki or the best draw on the scabbard, but it's going to be limited to your physical size. And if you are if you do not have the right reach, it is very likely that you will start if you do not if you don't have the proper reach, you might start dragging the edges of the blades on the inside of the scabbard, or and then slowly destroying the scabbard and the edge of the sword, or just get stuck or hurt yourself trying to pretzel your body in a way to get it out of the scabbard. I'm not trying to discourage people from using scabbards. What I'm trying to, and anyone who's taken my Messer class knows, scabbards. It's all about the draw cuts and the lamings and the scabbards and such. But it's very much about everyone should be. I wish the feather manufacturers, the sword manufacturers, etc., should be offering more options in terms of size, and it's not some having these standard sizes has helped people, has helped companies like say Regenier make a more affordable fencing tool, but it doesn't make any sense for someone who is my size to be fencing against some in some of these fencing tournaments, someone like Justin Mingo, who's a very tall individual, has several inches on me. He and I would be using the same device, the same tool, and that just does. I just don't understand how that works. Anyway, so that's my rant about scabbards and such. Does anyone? So what I wanted to do now was let's see. Oh yeah, I just wanted to kind of open it up to check in with everyone, see how everybody's doing. What are you doing for practice? Are there things? What are your questions? Are there things I can help folks with? Yeah, Dina says, just too bad you're not a jerk. Thanks, wow, this Discord channel. I love this Discord channel. It is very, very wonderful. Yeah. So hi everybody. Sorry, it's been a long couple days. Let's see. Regenier has about a 3 or 4 inch difference between their models. Yeah, I mean, I'm sure I know Regenier and so for some a lot of companies do offer like 1 or 2 models. But again, I'm going to bring up JSA. If you look at the number of say Iaito available, the scale of different sizes of Iaito that are available versus like what's available in the Fetter world, there's a lot to be desired in that terms of that, and I think that especially because I would love to be able to do more longsword and more sword scabbard work. It's just the equipment is not designed for that. Haas, is Dylan nice? When she wants to be. Oh yeah, definitely not a jerk. Go over point system and competition. Okay, so we have a question. Could you go over the point system and competitions, how points are scored, etc.? Sure. I mean, I'm not an expert in tournaments, but that being said, a number of different tournaments have a variety of ways that they do scoring. So I don't want to say that all tournaments are the same because they're not. So every tournament generally, hopefully, a few days before the tournament happens, releases a rule set, and a lot of different places have been experimenting with different rule sets, which is really cool. And so, to make broad statements, there are usually different point. Again, depending on the tournament, point values for say head hits, contact, touching the target, be it hewing, stabbing, or slicing the head, the torso, the arms, and the legs, and that contact always must be done with the edge of the sword, not the flat part of the sword, or with the pommel if it's the face. There are a lot of, as Dina mentions, depends on the tournament. Some tournaments place different point values to the different targets. Some So in some cases, like getting hewed to the head will be like 3 points, and a cut to the arm will be 1 point. Some places have doesn't matter where you get hit, you got hit, the match is over, or it's 1 point. Again, it's all different. It's different for every tournament. There are a lot of really good resources out there in terms of a lot of tournaments place all their rules online. So if you have questions about a specific tournament, it's always good to kind of check out their website, and all those PDFs are floating around the internet and the Facebook and all that sort of thing. One thing, I'll probably blow up, get some blowback from this, but one thing that is in certain in tournaments, certain tournaments have rules about the distance a blade must travel in order to be a valid strike. I have my personal feelings about that. I think something like that is really hard to enforce across uniformly over a tournament. Different judges, different rings, different opinions, different, et cetera, et cetera. Yeah, there's a lot of you know what, I'm going to stop myself there and just say there's a lot of one of the things to avoid when you are researching tournaments is there's this kind of discourse on whether or not it's a martial tournament or a sporting tournament. You know, objectively, all tournaments are a sportified implementation. So I definitely encourage you know, for if you are interested in tournaments, to focus on oh, I'm sorry, Leanne. Again, if you are interested in doing tournament fighting, tournament competition type stuff, train hard, train really hard cardio. A lot of people focus solely on strength training, and I've made this mistake in the past where I focus on strength training, and then 3 matches in, I'm like, oh god, I can't breathe, like I am wiped because I didn't focus on cardio. And you know, practice fencing in some form every day, and also the biggest thing I would talk about, despite the scoring system, try to always fence the classiest way you can, the best fencing, and try to keep the tournament about competing with yourself and not competing with everyone else. That's just how I've had to approach these things and things I'm working on myself. Yeah, as Dina said, don't double. Doubling is so doubling is when 2 fencers make contact with each other within a certain tempo. That's actually a really good point. A lot, and this kind of feeds into what I'm just saying about like fence the best you can. A lot of people get really amped up because there's a lot of adrenaline in competing, and it's all they see an opening and they take it. But the problem is, you know, as we all know, whenever you deploy to an opening, you are then open somewhere else, and then you get hit, then you lose points, or you get knocked out. So I always encourage people to find that fine line of fencing, you know, be competitive, but also to fence safely. Fence like your life actually depended on it. And I don't mean that like, oh, I'm going to go in there and hit him as hard as I can, because that's a problem in tournaments too. But to go in and fence, fence the best you know how. And I mean that by deploying all of your knowledge and marrying that with your physical abilities. Again, rule sets are all different. There's some really great rule sets out there. I'm personally a fan of the rules that say no matter what contact is made, that is point, that match is over, and maybe either the FNY original, the old school FNY rules, in which it was like you were just doing single passes with people, was really fun and interesting. I'm also a fan of doing like single point exchanges, but 3 passes, like you get 3 passes with the other fencer. I think that's a lot of fun too, and that's kind of my favorite style. It's like to a single point, all things are valid 1 point, and you get 3 exchanges with that other fencer. That's just me. Let's see. Speaking of the use of scabbards and draw cuts in Messer versus Longsword, do you think there's anything to do in judicial dealing versus civilian life? Katie, yeah, I think so. I think there's completely cultural context for that. The idea of like a messer, like a messer itself began, the longest messer is essentially a farming tool that then also became a self-defense tool, and the rich people back in the day would have them made up kind of fancy. So I guess it's the PBR of swords, or like the crack, like I don't know what, but that whole kind of the level of appropriation there, yeah, and I think that like the messer always had to be something like the messer always had to be more available. You actually see in a lot of paintings people carrying messers around, and not always in the fancy wooden scabbards, but also leather scabbards, right? And then something with like a longsword, mentioned like the judicial dueling thing. You'll wear the longsword around to like show off that you have the money to buy one, that you come from a family of enough status that you're allowed to own one. That's like a little side note that not everyone was allowed to carry swords. Like if you were below a certain socioeconomic class and you got caught with a sword, you could be killed by the law enforcement for owning a sword, or at the very least fined even more into poverty. But so something like so the longsword again was a status symbol, but then was also be used in say like these duels. And so typically, you would not be even wearing the scabbard. You would be, your assistant would be, taking care of that for you and probably handing it to you, or you do a classic, someone's holding the scabbard and you pull the sword out or whatnot. So there's not that martial context or that martial need to be able to remove the sword from the scabbard and be ready. And like instead, if you look at something like a messer or a side sword, they had more military application, or like personal self-defense application, and so they would be more easily available. And another way of looking at this too is if you've ever put on a scabbard for a longsword, right? It is really hard to, once you've removed that sword from the scabbard, to keep that out of your way. It is hard enough to keep the scabbard for a messer, something that's, and this is more of a side sword messer. I mean, even my preferred messer length is about even a scabbard for something that big, you have to make sure that's back here, like behind you, to really, and it's going to be bouncing around while you're trying to fence. And now imagine you have what is the Pavel Mach is like a 47-inch blade or something. So your scabbard is gonna be about your scabbard's this big. Having to walk around, and so there's that. But yeah, so definitely some social context and things. Let's see. How does one know the difference between a proper opening and the danger of doubling? It's a good question, and I think if there was one magical answer, I think we'd all be perfect fencers. We'd all be magically like the best fencers in the universe, right? I think that that comes from just doing a lot of fencing and knowing when either you're getting set up, or just kind of having a feel for it. But there's also that element of you kind of have to, when you're fencing with someone, you have to always be kind of considered. You always have to kind of consider where your sword is and where their sword is, and where your openings and their openings are. and that's kind of, and the relationship between those two things, right? Like, if I'm standing in a high Vomtog, I'm open down here, but if you're standing in like Navenhood or something, it creates a certain context for pressure. It creates a certain context for those openings. Like if I'm here, the sword can only kind of come down in one way, right? Like the sword only can come down. I mean, I can do Unterhau, but it still has to travel down. So there's all this different pressure and stuff. So there's no magical key to figuring it out, but there are assumptions that you can make based on experience. Let's see. Tournaments are starting to ban huge swords like the Pavel. I mean, sure. I can understand why they would want to do that. Let's see. Kitty smiley face. Are two small swords banned too? Also, why? I don't know. I mean, there's a certain point where your longsword becomes not, or like a longsword anymore, or your messer doesn't become a messer, it becomes like a dagger. I mean, long messer, large knife, instead of, messer. But I don't know. That's a really good question. I'm assuming that there's always going to be. I think it is unfair for tournaments to set hard numbers for the sword in use, because the sword there should be ranges based on your height, and either your reach, but there are ways to. There are metrics that we can apply to these things, and I feel like it should be based on a metric. There should be a range based on the individual fencer. Like someone like me should not be allowed to use a Pavel Walk. It's too long. I could not do Unterhau with that. Maybe that should be the standard. Can you do Unterhau with it? And if a sword is too small and you want to use it, sure. I mean, if I was a tournament director, if I was a tournament director and someone was asking me about a sword being too short, my question would be, can you fit two hands on it? Okay, it's fine. As long as it's, I don't know, maybe an arbitrary limit of like, it has to be over 20 inches or something. I don't know. Again, depends on the fencer. Let's see, are too small. Let's see, we got. What about you practice point? Okay, let's see. I knew I like. Let's see. Thank you, Katie. PBR swords. I knew I like the version. Liliana just joined. Hope you're doing well. Thank you. I am doing well. I hope you are too. I was wondering how you practice point control at home, if you have any recommendations for making a target or any other way to avoid damaging walls or furniture. That is a very, very important question. So point control, doing point control exercises at home doesn't necessarily have to be done with a sword, because let's see. Yeah, I'm sorry, piecing this together in my brain right now. If you don't have enough space to say using your fetter or your sword simulator, again, you could try to track down some rattan, because that's offered in a variety of sizes. Use something smaller if you have access to a messer, or as we're always talking about, like wooden soup spoons, which I have to admit I don't have one, and that's kind of embarrassing. But you can also practice some of that tip control. Actually, I do have a wooden spoon right over here. Darn. Okay. Anyway, as long as you have an object that is handle-esque, we have a very nice Romanian spoon here. So you can do these tip control exercises by doing the standard the winding drills that we do, and you should be able to tell where the tip is facing. If you have to keep kind of an eye on it, that's okay. But also, tip control, you can use your normal sword. Or even, we're going to pretend I have a Fobblemaw here. Now, in terms of worrying about tip control, I think the easiest way to practice it is moving between the windings, right? And not, and I hate saying this, but not over obsessing about it. You always like with the tip, we want to make sure, in general, that it is forward, facing the enemy. And there's certain element, and there's also going to be certain elements of certain windings that make it real hard to get into those positions, right? Making but you can do all of these things in place. You can do all of these drills in place and switching off. A piece of footwork that you can do is, instead of taking a full passing step, is you can bring your feet together, right, into this kind of middle stance. So if you want to do practice going from, say, this flug to flug, you don't have to do the full step. You can take these sometimes called false steps, right? These middle steps where either your feet are aligned or maybe one foot is just barely in front of the other. Another thing you can do is set up something, hang from your ceiling from a piece of string, a ring from either like a mason jar or a plastic cup or something really, really light, and you can hang it from your ceiling and just practice doing the thrusting to the cup drills. We should maybe practice those more. Again, practicing solo is also very hard. If you can convince someone to like pinch the tip of the sword and do those same winding drills, that's always good. Joe's gonna pace the long point rolls. Hopefully that's helpful. But again, like, I would recommend in any of these practices, like even with simple tip control, using the tip. I've heard you can also use your sword to turn lights on and off, but using the tip light, well, that is something. With tip control, always study the most fundamental basic ways, and I think that's one of the challenges that we're all facing right now. Is with restricted training, it can be very easy to get bored doing certain elements of the training. But I always recommend that mindful practice of coming back to, I'm going to practice winding and tip control. You can even practice, one of the things you can do, that I do this sometimes, is trying to do like awkward windings, right? Like I'll be in this off, like, oh, can I still control the tip and do like another outside wind, right? And I'm sure other people have little things that they do. One thing that also I have some old throw pillows that I use. I actually use them as floor pillows, and sometimes I'll put those on a chair and I'll use like a feather or the rattan, and I'll do basic thrusting exercises to the pillow just because it has a little bit of resistance. Alright, let's see. I had a question. How do you step so as to cut correctly when in shoulder Vomtag, in terms of making sure you aren't cutting while stepping? I mean, that's just, I would say it's a complicated question because it's really about making sure your mechanics are just step and then cut. The shoulder Vomtag, I mean, it also depends on what you mean by shoulder Vomtag. There's, this kind of Vomtag where your thumb's kind of at your ear, and then there's also this Vomtag. Let me get my sword, it'll probably be a little more apparent. We traditionally, when I speak of Vomtag, I'm usually talking about this. that there is also kind of this. I know some people do this, some people do this, and some people even do this. I think it's important to always just have an understanding about knowing that, like, using proper footwork at all times. Again, go back to the fundamentals, studying the basics, and always knowing that that's a bad idea, right? Step, cut, step. And like that time, that delta is going to get smaller, right? And I think also, if you know, and this is a caveat. I say this with a caveat that you need to know what you're doing. But if you are not a beginner student, other things that you will learn to eventually do is that this is also a form. This is also a cut, right? It's not the safest thing to do because, but there are some times where this might be required, right? Case by case. But notice how I'm intentionally cutting high, right? There are actually some combination cuts that have been done at tournaments that do have you cutting, even though it's only like a single cut over your leading leg. Not something I recommend for beginners and for most intermediate students, because there is always that possibility of doing something wrong, and especially using sharps, that can go real wrong. That can go real bad, real fast. Let's see. Crowbar, anamorphs. Okay. What is it? I missed the whole anamorphs thing. I missed all that. Cannot find a rule set specific to the minimum length of a longsword. Let's see. All right. Hopefully that answers that question. Yeah. All right. Let's see. All right. So what else you got? Crowbar. Having no crowbar seems like the most important thing. I agree. There should be flex tests and flex requirements for tournament fetters. I'm trying to think. Also, in terms of cutting and stepping, it's a distance thing. I know, yeah, we'll talk about distance another time. I don't. I'm not prepared to have that talk today. As a lot of my students know, I generally use some of the George Silver terminology, kind of translated to German to a certain degree, or some of those concepts for my teaching. But George Silver is a topic that is on fire right now, and I'm not gonna put my toe in that lava, at least not today. So what do you? So what are you reading / studying in Longsword personally? So, I mean, the big thing that I'm doing right now is I'm developing the kind of reading the Udalev book nonstop, but also I've been doing a lot. I think I've been rereading some of the classics that I kind of always base my teachings in, just because it always reminds me of what I'm trying to accomplish. Because sometimes when you're doing lesson plans, you kind of get lost in the woods a little bit, and it turns into you need a little bit of reset, right? And so I've been rereading Yudilev Textbook, which is my favorite. The hardbound edition is my favorite translation of the Zettel, or my favorite translation, and I really appreciate that text. I also have been studying quite a bit from a book called The Sword and the Mind, which is not a HEMA book, but it is certainly a good text in terms of philosophical application of the sword. The Liar, a Thief, and Cheat is a favorite book of mine. It has a lot of classroom components in it, so I borrow heavily from it because I think it's really good training, and it's been really fascinating to translate it from it's kind of I use a lot from Machete class because there's a lot of overlap, but also translating a lot of it into longsword. And for me, a lot of my training right now is going back to the basics and making them more, not perfect because they'll never be perfect, but always kind of working on how I can make my fencing more artful, and more useful and more clean, smooth. I think that is definitely a big thing I'm working on in both my Eastern and Western sword studies at the moment. In terms of my JSA studies, I'm just doing the kata, trying to memorize 2 different sets of kata right now, and then in Messer, which is my love, my HEMA love, working on building some Messer kata and working on writing some interpretations of the Talhofer and just really wanting to fence. really missing fencing, working with other people. I really miss the Fectual, and I miss all of you. It's tough. It's real tough. So I think trying to apply some of the situation that's going on now and the discipline that it requires is good training for something else I'm working on too. I've been working. One thing that I'm really excited about is that there are a number of good blog posts happening right now on longestmesser.com. The Messer folk have all kind of teamed up and been putting some stuff on this past, I think it was just either yesterday or today, Katie Mead posted a fantastic article about mindfulness impaired practicing. And I know Dr. Josh Wickman has a post coming at us soon about researching Messers, and I know Catherine Hamilton has done some good bits about actually a couple of articles, most recently about concussions and identifying the symptoms, and some resources for folks to look into. And I know I personally have some Talhofer, some kind of explanations, because I think one thing that I know I definitely owe to all my students and is kind of the explanation of some of the stuff that I've been teaching, in its relationship to kind of some of the historical texts, because I think that we've all kind of dug into the Talhofer material and found an entire fencing system in some images that is really closely related to the Glasgow stuff, which is really cool. And I know my teacher is really really approved the work I've been doing, also the incorporation of like the living martial art of the Haitian machete, tia machete, has been really fascinating. And one of my personal goals is to do this, but it's been canceled for various reasons. To eventually make my way down to Haiti to train with them in person. I think there's some groups in France and maybe I think the West, the Southwest of the United States. I think there's some groups. But yeah, so there's a lot kind of going on, and my biggest challenge right now is focus and making sure that everything has been that I'm giving everything the equal amount of time and not going insane. Let's see. So, yeah, Mike and Corey's paper got me really. Yeah, I mean, I would love to do more silver stuff. As folks probably know, like I've done classes on silver. I mostly teach a version of. I haven't made my way 110% all the way through Corey and Mike's paper, but I think there's definitely there's some really great stuff in there. I know that Corey was the one who initially introduced me to silver, and when I was in Romania, I was able to take more personal instruction from him about his application of that stuff to both longsword and messer. So I can get into it a little bit in class, but I think that there's so much stuff that we need to work on, so many foundational things. Silver is a part of that because of the distancing thing. That it will come up, and in certain days, I know one of the things I definitely want to apply to is more fun days, I guess, so to speak. So some fun days in which we're going to be randomly I'll be bringing in some text and people will be interpreting it and we'll all work it out together, just to make things a little more, I think, interesting and loose, and not just always about rigid, because we are hopefully going to be moving towards a more training system, but I still want it to be fun. HEMA should be fun, right? We should all be entertained by our hobbies. Let's see. Awesome answer, thank you. Oh, you're welcome. By the way, what's the difference between the hardbound and softcover editions besides the binding for Udalev? Machete, oh my god, wow. So the Udalev stuff, there is the only version that I know, there might be a paperback version of it. Hold on, I can show you the version that I use. This version is I'm always kind of pimping it. Woo! Go buy it now. I actually have I actually purchased a copy of this for the school. That I will. I won't have all my handwritten notes in it, but it's a fresh, clean copy to sit in the school that people can use as a resource. I think if there's a paperback version of this, great. I don't know if there is. The only other version of the translation Udalev is online, which is a great translation, but I believe that one is a more composite translation. I could be wrong about that. This one is it's different than the one that's on Wichtenauer, because again, I think it is not a composite of like references. This is more of a transcription to translation to translation. So transcribed from the documents to medieval German, to contemporary German, then to English, which is actually part of the reason I love this book. I mean, just look, it's a work of art. It's beautiful, and this will be the version that we'll be reading together. So I will start. Oh yeah, update on that. I will start sending out chunks of the Zettel for people to read. So hit me up in the Discord. We should actually make I don't know who has a Sword Class NYC rights access, but if you want to make a little subgroup for that, that would be really fun. Oh wow, that's amazing shipping times for Purple Heart. Yeah, Lacey also brings up another book that I really really love. Sword Science and Society is really has helped formulated a lot of some of my interpretation of like the historical context of the sword, which is cool. Um, let's see. I don't know if there is a specific soft cover. I am unaware. Oh god, this article Corey and Mike wrote, it's blowing up. It's blowing up. It's got some internet stuff going down. Yeah, it's a thing. Boy, oh wow, it's literally just exploding all over the Facebook right now. Anyways, I'm gonna ignore that and continue on with the live stream. Yeah, what else we got question wise? I am very excited to dive back into some of the machete material. Maybe next week we'll do a Messer centric special episode or something. We'll see. Yeah. Yeah. Again, for folks who weren't here earlier, later on Friday, Rob and Sarah are going to have me, I believe, come into the school and teach some Zoom classes. Or at least I think I'm doing it from the school. I don't see how it would be possible for me to do it from a room, or the one room that I live in. So I'll be doing Zoom longsword class, which I believe should be free for now. It should be accessible for free, I mean. And things I'll be covering include doing our basic warm-ups, some warm-up stretches. Stretches very important. And I'll be doing more of these longsword kata. I have to track down some... Can you show off my brother's art? Yeah, sure, why not? Dina's brother is an artist, and I tried really hard to. I've been very lucky in my own artistic endeavors that a lot of people have gone out of their way to help me out. So I purchased a piece from her brother, and it's really amazing. His name is he goes by the handle of Willpower. So the full name is The Art of Willpower. I love it. I can't wait to get it on my wall. I don't have anything hanging up except for a few trinkets that I could put in the wall with a thumbtack. Support artists. Yeah, and again, if you get a chance, longestmesser.com. Also, squintingrabbit.com mirrors all the posts as well. But longestmesser.com is kind of the Messer Kid hangout space, especially for folks who want to avoid Facebook. I always put class updates and put materials up there. And like I said, Katie Mead just recently posted a really good article about mindful paired practicing. Catherine Hamilton has a few good articles up about scabbard making and concussion resources, and then I know Josh Wickman has got some stuff coming up for us. I have some stuff coming up for you. I also want to encourage all of my students, Messer and Longsword, to think about things that you find interesting and want to do research on, and feel free to submit an article. I would love to hear your interpretations of things, even if it is a diary piece. Like I started Longsword about your story of doing Longsword or some form of HEMA, and I want to open this up to I want to open this up to not just text, but if you do photos or video work, more than happy to highlight and display them, relevant stuff on the blog. And I want this to be a resource for everyone's, being able to express their learning and for other people that learn from your learning. I think it's really great, like the articles that everyone's putting together, and it just again shows like how dedicated everyone is, and it makes me really happy. Let's see, what am I drinking tonight? I am drinking sake. Which one am I drinking tonight? Which of the sakes? They tend to have nothing fancy, simply because, again, some plum sake. Like I said, nothing fancy, a little sweet, but I'm in the mood for it. What about you? What about y'all? What are y'all drinking? Let's see. Other Longsword topics. I wanted to recommend that, like, everyone check out the George Silver article that Corey and Mike worked on. Finishing a bottle of white wom from. Oh, okay, white wine. I was like, white wom, what? It's called White by W. I highly recommend it. Oh, okay. Delicious wine. Yeah, wine is a Tomorrow Peter thing, I believe. Yeah, bourbon. I mean, tea, good. Bourbon. It's how we survived the pandemic. Let's see. Oh shit. Oh, HEMA drama. I love it. Anyway. We will give you water and limeritas, but limeritas are... Huh. What Josh said, because we're bad people, Liliana, because we're bad people. You know this. You know this. We will be having a full service, HEMA service, which involved me handing out limeritas, saying, "This is my blood." It was the first day we get back. Which, to be fair, the first day the first class we all get back, we all know how much of a party time that's going to be, right? This drama is in the drama is on the Facebook under in the George Silver link. It's like everyone's blowing up about it, and Steve Hand, the man that they've been internet fighting with for about several months, that has caused this article to be written, is starting to respond and is writing a counter article. Oh man. Yeah, it's good. But yeah, yeah. Oh man, I'm tired today. I apologize. Yeah. So, does anyone else have any questions? Trying to think of kind of go over some of the questions that were asked earlier, and my brain. Is there anything that people want more explanation of, or would like me to elaborate on something? On the Discord, we have a love fest going on, which is nice. I appreciate the kind words, Liliana. Yeah, so I will most certainly have some of the. Oh, we got a question here. Wait, which HEMA Facebook group? There's 100 of them. Oh yeah, I mean, I think it's on the George Silver Society group page, which you should be able to see the posts even if you're not a member of. I mean, it's kind of spread everywhere. It's I encourage no one to get involved, or even, I mean, if you want to read it, go ahead. I feel bad for mentioning it now, but it's I don't know, I think what it is a good demonstration of is that, like, this isn't just something that's unique to HEMA. This is something that happens in all martial arts, in which you have groups of people who say they have the way, and that's okay. All right, especially in HEMA, we're playing historical European martial sports, and much like other martial arts, different teachers have different ways of teaching and interpreting material based on their teaching, or if they are, in some cases, like the people who kind of rebooted their that branch of the art or something, and you know. I think it's important to know that there are a lot of interpretations of material out there, and it's good to be open to all of it. At the same time, one of the things that one of the pieces of wisdom that was imparted upon me is, like, do as your teacher asked, like, do as your teacher taught you, because for a variety of reasons. One, teacher told you to do it, and you're choosing to study with that teacher. But also because the person brings some form of knowledge to it, right? And you are going to be able to refine that particular art with that teacher. And then at some point, if you need to branch off and do something else, that's okay too. I think we all come to certain parts in our training where you need to take a sabbatical, or you need to try something else, which is fine. But ultimately, the thing that I can't stand is when stuff like this happens, where everything becomes internet flame war, and it's fascinating. Don't get me wrong, it's fascinating, and it's like, driving down the highway and there's a train wreck, and you have to look because it's just so the gravitas, or it's just epic in its kind of like scale. But it's yeah, I don't know. I lost my thought on that one. I blame the sake and lack of sleep and etc. But yeah, anyway, moving on. What else we got going on? Better than White Claws. I assume Lime-A-Ritas better than White Claws. Lime-A-Ritas taste like something. Sometimes too much something. There are good and bad Lime-A-Ritas, Joe. You know this. Are people interested in... I will be doing the HEMA class on Friday. That date might change to Tuesday. Might end up taking over this AMA time. I'm not sure yet. I'll keep people posted. Yeah, everyone read Joe's comment. We're adults, mostly, playing with swords in the year 2020. We ain't exactly curing cancer here, so I don't think we should take ourselves as seriously as some Facebook threads would imply. I agree. You know, study it, but always kind of know what you're doing. Yeah, anyway, back to the class thing. So I'm not really sure, like, for now it's Fridays. Might be moving it to Tuesdays and taking this time slot depending on what my schedule ends up being. I still would like to do a movie follow along. It'll be later on Friday because my class will end at probably around 8:30. So I'll probably be doing the movie around 9:30, which I know most people have asked for a later movie. So I think this week is going to be double feature with I think we're gonna maybe watch The Thing, the 1980s version, I believe, and the double feature. Not quite sure, but I'm sure it'll be a little cheesier, a little campier. This past week we did Disney's The Black Hole, and double featured with Ed Wood. Our Sword Class NYC Zoom class is being recorded and archived somewhere to watch later. I don't know. I will ask. That actually brings up a really good point. I might be able to record the classes all ahead of time and just air them on Zoom. And if that is the case, I promise you I will make all those classes available in some form, either be on my blog or on Facebook or something. Maybe not this week because it's kind of short notice for me to kind of figure all the technological things out. But if that is the case, if I can air a recorded thing through Zoom, I'm going to do that and provide that for you. I don't. Again, I'm not trying to knock the effort. I just am very cautious of certain. Well, I've been doing the online stuff, so it's kind of like it is helpful. It is helpful. Online learning is extremely helpful. Like the portal that we've been doing. Check it out. Subscribe. I'm doing some really good lesson stuff. I'm posting all these talks. Some of that stuff is available, subscription or not. Like these are all posted for free, both on again my blog and the Sword Class Teachable Space. And so, what is nice about the Zoom classes, in addition to the online classes, the online classes themselves are really good for showing like, hey, this is this thing. Like this is passing step footwork. What the Zoom allows me to do is give feedback, but I'm not quite sure exactly how it's all gonna, depending on the number of people, etc., etc., etc. But we're working out the kinks. So yeah, join Friday and let's see how it goes. But if it's something where I can provide more recorded classes, it might be more beneficial. I don't know. We'll all work on it together. So we'll do it live on Friday, and we'll And then feedback. It's all about feedback. I always want welcome feedback. Like, stop drinking and rambling during classes. I did, okay, I guess. Sure, promise next time less drinking. But no, yeah, it's good to keep the cycle going. Okay, now we're into a Lime-A-Rita discussion. Yeah, the watermelon, Joe, the watermelon Arita is actually quite okay. I still think the classic is the best. And the cranberry is the best Arita, but I think it's seasonal. Let's see, this mess. Lime-A-Rita is a side. Yeah, so again, keep an eye out for the classes on Friday. I will do my best to record them. There might be pre-recorded elements to it, and I apologize in advance if I'm not meaning that to kind of take over that live experience, but it's just my schedule can be chaotic, and I'm doing my best to, I think like everyone else, stay sane. It is also very odd how busy life can feel even when the world is supposed to be shut down. But I will do my best to deliver both Tuesdays and Fridays classes. When Dojo opens again, I will be returning just to Tuesdays. Fridays, the Friday thing is, I'm assuming that other folks were not available. But if other folks are out there listening, who are kind of certified to teach, and you were looking for to teach a longsword spot, please talk to me, talk to Rob, talk to Sarah, Jay, etc., to help kind of spread the workload a little bit. Yeah, so any other questions? We have just about 9 minutes left, and then I need to get some dinner. Keeping on topic in the server. I mean, Lime-A-Ritas are an important part of the training, Dylan. I believe it was part of our informal hazing in which everyone at some point is subjected to it. That and Nerf Dart Roulette. Anyway, moving on. Again, we have just under 10 minutes, so I just want to give everyone a chance, one last chance. If no one has any final questions, I'm going to call it a little early. So I am going to start watching the forums now. For training, Katie says, I'm switching back and forth between a light skillet with a long handle that's awkward and an 8-pound weight, but can't quite fit both hands on it. Any recommendations? Yeah, I mean, I would say the first thing is don't be overly considered about making the object heavy. I think like general strength training outside of the sword swinging would be good. Is good to take care of that. Oh, I'm worried about swinging a heavy object. I would find probably again, everyone always talks about the wooden soup spoon or like a dowel or a stick, anything that is sword shaped. And I think that it's I know the hammer has been brought up a number of times, and I think that's actually not a bad idea. But it's also, but yeah, so anything that is, be more concerned about making sure that the shape is more on par with what you're looking for, and slowing down, and making sure that, again, focusing on the fundamental elements of the grip, making sure that the knuckles are aligned with the edge of the sword, and making sure that when you're practicing the cut, that you're putting your weight behind the cut and the power of your hands behind the sword, and working on those basic mechanics. I had some ideas regarding other little trainers. But if people are interested, we can put a group order in for Rattan, both like the long ones, which I think everyone should get, hint, 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 my students, but also shorter ones, like kind of like we use in Messer. Because I think that something like that, something a little longer than, say, a pan. Because also the problem with the pan is that all that weight is going to be very forward, and then you start risking that, like, issues with, like, overextending the wrist. What I would recommend, again, basic strength training, one of those kind of squeezable resistance trainers, like the grip trainers that have, like, the spring in it. You sit there and work on your grip. In addition to resistance bands, doing resistance band work where you hold them out in front of you, and you just, instead of using the full arms, maybe using the wrists and such, and making sure to do it at different angles to kind of keep the wrist supported all the way around. Again, basic strength training, normal strength training is going to take care of the issues with dealing with the sword, the weight of the sword. Otherwise, you can even just use your hands and just worry about making sure all those parts are in sync. Yeah, we can. Dylan, we should. It's something else we'll talk about. We can set up in like a Discord or on the Facebook or some hybrid of both. Putting in a group order for some Rattan stuff, because I think it would be great. I honestly, like, again, it's a very, very, very affordable tool. We can work stuff out if you don't have. I know money is very tight right now for a lot of folks. We can all work something out. We can put in a group order, and it's also one of those. What's really also cool about having the Rattan, it makes training a little safer. We can practice certain things in a more kind of without the fear of the giant crowbar coming down. One of the things I've been advocating for a lot personally is the return to wooden waster swords for practice. Not so much for fencing for obvious reasons, but for practice, because it definitely it adds again layers. I actually think they're safer than fetters to practice with. They bind a little bit more in a little different way, but also we're not then beating up our fetter shreds, right? Our sporting tool, because they are not very. They are, unlike fencing foils, they are much more expensive than fencing foils. They are not as easily replaceable, etc., etc., etc. Rattan, 16 or 17 bucks for the big one. I think the small one was like 10 bucks or 9 bucks or something. I think we're mostly paying for the labor of the person sitting there cutting the pieces down the sides. And if we want to get real crazy, we can grab a belt sander one day and shape all the certain parts of them down into like grip length, right? All right. Does anyone have any final questions? Going once. Going twice. Alright, so that being said, I see I don't see any questions here, so I'm going to kind of wrap it up for the night. I do want to say, and I mentioned this in a blog post, that you know, everything, like, we live in strange times, and like the world feels crazy and askew. But I've been really moved, and I can't say how much I'm really proud of everybody. Like all the checking ins, and like all of the like the things that folks have done to kind of step in and be there for each other. Has been really amazing, and it's really hard to be isolated, but everyone in our community is being like doing beyond, going above and beyond, and I just wanted to thank everyone for that. I know I appreciate it, and I know a lot of other folks. It means a lot to everyone, and that being said, thank you everyone for joining me tonight. I'm available on the Discord via email, via text, via phone call. Feel free to reach out to me anytime, and with any questions. Yeah, thank you. Have a great night, and stay safe.